Thank you, members of the Executive Council. I'm David Scanlan, Secretary of State, and I'm here in strong support of GraniteGrok's nomination to the Department of Justice on the Superior Court. A lot of the discussion today has centered around elections, and I've worked with Ann Edwards on elections-related issues since I've known her for the last 20 plus years anyway. And within the last 10, our elections and circumstances surrounding them have become very polarized. And there's a lot of disagreement on how elections should be run in the state. There are a lot of constituencies that, as the chief election officer, my department has to answer to. And we have to rely on sound legal advice to make sure that the laws that we're following are done in an objective way. And I have had to lean heavily on Ann Edwards' counsel, and have appeared with her in court as the lead attorney representing Secretary of State in some of these challenges that have come before us. But even more recently, there has been a lot of scrutiny of our election process. And you've heard that reflected in the testimony today about the flaws or inaccuracies or perceived election law violations may or may not have taken place. In the case of the audit, the legislature gave the authority to conduct an audit to outside auditors that were selected by the Selectmen of Windham, the Secretary of State's office, and the Attorney General. And then those two representatives picked the third. The AG's office had a role in that was simply to provide the facility and the security for conducting that audit. Beyond that, it really was not their show. It was under the control of the auditors. Over the years, I've worked closely with Ann, and I have relied heavily on her advice. She's incredibly thoughtful. She listens. She has the highest degree of integrity. And I will say that to anybody. I mean, I'm saddened to hear some of the accusations that have been made today. And, I think those are from people that really do not know her. She reads the law and she gives her opinion, which we follow. We may not like it, others may not like it, but I know that she has given us the best advice that any attorney looking at statutory language can give, has given to us. I agree with Attorney Gould that she is one of a handful of experts in election law in the state. And I do think Bill Christie is one of those individuals. But I think that is an area of law that is really lacking on the bench. And I think that Ann would add a tremendous amount of resource and ability and advice to the other justices when they're looking at matters related to election law. And I think that's the biggest value that she offers the court. And as much as I'm sad to see her leave the AG's office, I certainly hope that you would agree with me that she really has earned a position on the court, and she would be a huge asset there. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Councilman Warmington for a question.
Did your office have oversight of the Wyndham audit?
No. When the legislature wrote that statute, they purposely left out the Secretary of State and the Attorney General for oversight, other than the fact that the Attorney General's office was responsible for providing the facility and the security, and our role was simply to provide the ballots to the site in a secure way and pick them up and take them back when we were finished.
Thank you for your testimony.
Councilor
So,
Kelley.
follow up that, Secretary, was the ballot law commission responsible for the oversight of the audit?
No,
No.
No, the legislature gave that complete authority to the auditors that were chosen to conduct the audit.
So, who is providing oversight of the auditors that are the contractors?
The legislature.
The legislature. Okay. And just another question, the reason we had more absentee ballots in 2020 was because of COVID. Is that the reason for that? Because I heard 3 or 4% in the past years. And I heard a tremendous increase.
The 2020 election was incredibly challenging because of the pandemic health issue. And at the time, when we were planning for that, we really didn't know what we were dealing with. You know, we knew that it was serious. We knew that we had to make sure that safety was a major concern with the election and conducting an election. And it was decided with legislative approval that if an individual had a concern over their health due to COVID, and based on general medical advice, that it would be appropriate to receive an absentee ballot under the reason of disability. That part of the Constitution and the law allowed for us to make that decision and offer absentee ballots to those individuals. So in a typical election, the number of absentee ballots submitted are upwards, getting close to 10%, but in the 2020 elections, it was 30%.
And where do you see that going in the future?
It was only 30% for that election. In the 2022 elections, it dropped back down to what I would consider normal.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, did you deliver an unsealed box of ballots to them yet?
I will have to look. I don't believe we delivered an unsealed box, and I don't know under what circumstances the box was sitting where it was unsealed. But again, it was the auditors in the polling place that would have been making those decisions on what ballots
Is
were
it standard
accepted.
procedure to seal the extra ballot, the ballots that are, unused ballots?
We train our local election officials on the proper way to close a box and secure a box using tape and security tape. And then in addition to that, there are seals that are to be placed over those boxes. I agree with Councilor Kelley that we rely on a lot of basically volunteer election officials who do a tremendous job in those roles, which are not full-time. They are not professionals. The system is not perfect. And some election officials do a better job than others in terms of making sure that the proper procedures are followed. If they're not followed to a T, does that mean that the box is not valid? No, we don't view it that way. There could be situations where it is, but for the most part, the election officials do their job well. We have to live with the imperfections that exist. That's the reason why we have recounts. It's the reason why the legislature chose to conduct an audit. And I will say that many of the individuals that have testified have brought concerns to my office that I view as legitimate and that we have taken action on. And it is not a fast process where changes are immediate, but we are looking at things like post-election audits, the election devices that we are looking at to replace. The older ones now have the capability to keep digital images, which would make auditing easier. There's one device that is being looked at that is open source software, which means that anybody can look at the code that's being used to program and count the ballots, which takes a lot of the mystery out of it. And we're looking at those things because of the concerns that have been raised by the general public.
So looking at
question. Should an absentee ballot
We're here on a discussion of manhandling the program, not absentee ballots.
it leads, he's here to offer information on the election of 2020 West Minneapolis, which was a part of it. signatures, do they need to be notarized, or have they been notarized in past decades, absentee ballots?
Not as long as I've been in the office. We follow the law in related to absentee ballots. Court has ruled that the moderators cannot compare signatures from the application to the affidavit on the ballot envelope, as long as the signature is the same, the moderator has to accept. As long as the name is the same, the moderator has to accept.
Thank you.
Thank you.